OPAL I'm a community scientist, which means it's my job to link together scientists and researchers and members of the public. The work that we're doing in OPAL is really important because it's a challenging time for the environment. We've got the pressures of things like climate change, so we've got very variable climate now. Species are having to respond to urbanisation, which is where we have increasing numbers of people living in towns and cities. So a larger area of our planet is taken up by urban areas, which means there's less space for wildlife. And it's really important that we understand our impact on the environment, and we can only do that by knowing about what species are around us and how they live and what sort of places they like to live. My research particularly is looking at environmental education and trying to find out how we can improve the ways that we do environmental education, which is teaching people of all ages about the environment. A lot of my work is with members of the public. I'm doing some research at the moment with environmental educators, so I'm working with about 30 environmental educators across Yorkshire, and I'm working to try and understand how we currently evaluate our projects to see whether they're successful or not. And the methodologies that I'm using here are semi-structured focus groups or one-to-one interviews. And this is where I sit down with a group and we talk about issues. I've thought about the questions in advance, but it's quite fluid, so we can discuss other issues if we want to. In the focus groups, they're all taped, and then I transcribe them, which means I type them up onto the computer. And when I do this, I can actually then see how the dialogue has taken place, and I can draw out the themes, what the key points people have been talking about. I work with a whole range of different people. I work with environmental educators in Yorkshire at the moment on a project I'm doing currently. We also work with school groups, from primary school right the way through to further education. I also work with the students here at the University of York, doing species ID, teaching them how to plan projects and how to design surveys. I work with adults of all ages, community groups, anybody really. I don't think there's ever a typical day in academia, but if I was trying to describe a typical day, I'd say it would probably involve a bit of field work, so a bit of going out and doing some surveying with groups, trying to get them to understand their local environment a bit better. It might involve doing some marking or student supervision. It might involve a bit of doing some lectures, or if I have time, I'll be sitting at my desk doing some research, so I'll be looking on the internet or going to the library to read papers about the type of work that I'm doing. One of the things we found in our work with OPAL is actually that a large number of people have very little knowledge about the environment. We've been doing projects with primary school children who've never seen a sheep before, have never been in a wood before, and the work that we're doing is just opening their eyes to a whole nother world. One of the problems we've had with OPAL is just trying to reach out to people that have never done any of this kind of work before, which is quite a challenge. We're trying to work with what's called hard-to-reach groups, which are groups that don't normally engage in environmental activities. But we've overcome these challenges by doing very local recruitment, so putting up posters about events in local post offices, in the local newspapers, talking to local radio stations, and that's been really effective ways of recruiting volunteers. The best thing about my job is its variety. Every single day is different. I can be out in the field one day. Actually, let's take today as an example. Yesterday I was in a rock pool in Scarborough. This morning I was catching up on my emails, and I've just been planning the media launch of our next survey. So it's a very, very varied job, and just the most amazing thing is being able to get out there and communicate my work to members of the public. The weirdest part of my job, it's not weird to me, but other people find it weird, as I spend a lot of time out in the field talking to people of all ages about the environment and carrying around with me boxes of worms and lichens on twigs and generally getting a bit muddy. I spent most of last weekend with my head in a rock pool, and some of my other colleagues who do more desk-based work find this a little bit strange, but it's all in a day's work for me.